deck. Bulls, Atlanta Hawks, Cup game. Let's go. Oh, hey, look, there's Will Perdue. He said, what are we doing here? Live pregame code up next. What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome in to CHGO Bulls pregame, presented by Coors Light. Coming to you live from our studios here in West Loop, downtown Chicago. I'm Peck, Bulls_Peck. That's Big Dave. Bam! BAWL Sports. Uncle Will Perdue, man in the middle, Will_Perdue 32. And Art Green on the controls. Rocking with us as always, the one and only Katie Duffy. Pew, pew. Bulls, Hawks. Who's ready? Are you ready, Dave?
I'm ready.
Are you ready, Uncle Will?
Bulls are winning tonight.
I mean, it's Bulls-Hawks. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be high-scoring, and the Bulls are going to find a way to squeak out a win. That's the script, right?
Usually that's the script when they're playing the Atlanta Hawks, but it's also because it's Matt's favorite midseason tournament cup game.
Woo!
The Hawks are 2-0. The Hawks are 2-0 in the midseason tournament cup. I don't know how they beat Atlanta, but I don't know how they beat Boston, but they did.
By the narrowest of margins.
117, 116, yes. And without Trae Young. He wasn't even playing. And on the road, so shout out to them even more. But they got a tough test against the Bulls because the Bulls and the Hawks usually play each other to a standstill, and it's usually a high-scoring game. And hopefully we won't get that fifth quarter, as they like to say, but we'll see.
You just jinxed us, Dave.
Yeah,
just jinxed us.
It'll be all right.
I mean, what else is Dave going to do tonight?
Yeah. He's right about that. He's right.
Yes, you mentioned the Hawks off to a 2-0 start. We can check in on the NBA Cup standings in just a second. But first, let's lead with the biggest news, and that is Patrick Williams, who gave the Bulls media an update, as well as Billy Donovan speaking on Patrick Williams and his condition with this foot before the game. So our guy, Will the Goat Gottlieb, tweeted about an hour ago from Billy, who said the imaging that Patrick had done when he stayed home from their one-game trip up to Milwaukee, right, did not reveal anything in addition to the inflation that they knew was
inflation?
there. The inflammation that they knew was there. Thank you, Will. They'll need to calm down the inflammation before they figure out a return-to-play plan. Pat still does have discomfort and soreness in that foot.
Great.
I mean, they had already ruled him out for this back-to-back tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And said probably into next week as well.
Yes.
I believe I did see from one of the other beat writers, maybe Casey, that he is planning on going on their 2-game road trip next week. It's just a matter of whether or not he'll play. Probably not, but he's going to go.
Okay, great. Yeah. I don't know what else I can add to that. I mean, great. Inflammation, they know what it is. It's still discomfort and soreness. Awesome.
Then we heard from Patrick Williams himself. This video courtesy of our guy, Will the Goat Gottlieb, who was talking to Patrick Williams in that media scrum pregame. Katie, if you will.
I'm not really concerned. Obviously, with this type of stuff, just leaning on the doctors, obviously our training staff, the team that I work with back home over the summer, just getting to this point. And nobody seems to be worried. It's more of a this is kind of a thing that happens post-surgery. The first year after surgery is always kind of the toughest. It's always trying to figure out new parameters, trying to work through different things. So it did kind of swell up there a little bit. Kind of trying to get that down. That's kind of where we are.
Take us through on Monday, because you landed on the injury report as probable. You played that night, and did something happen in that game that worsened it?
No, it was I think just an accumulation of minutes overall. It wasn't a specific player or anything like that. I think that last back-to-back kind of, even before going into that first game of the back-to-back, it was kind of, I kind of felt it there. I didn't really know much of what it was because I hadn't really had any sensation in it at all. before that kind of felt pretty good. So, just talking to those guys and talking through it, like I said, just trusting them, relying on them. It's kind of the first foot surgery that I've been through, so that's kind of what we got.
How does the pain or discomfort compare to before you had the surgery?
Not even close. I couldn't even really push off of it. Every step, every run was tough before the surgery. So that's kind of why I'm not worried too, because I remember what it felt like before. You know what I mean? And it's not even close to that.
Okay, so that was Patrick Williams moments ago talking about the latest news with his sore foot that caused him to miss the Wednesday Bucks game. Correct. That was our Willie Gottlieb asking him at the tail end of that, like, compared this discomfort, soreness, pain level, whatever, to what it was before you had your season-ending foot surgery last year. Good news, you heard Pat there say not even close. So if you're going to split hairs and say, how serious is this really? Are they just being overly cautious? It's good to at least hear from Patrick himself that the pain level is nowhere near what it was. But maybe the frustrating part is that the three of us were sitting here talking the other night before Bulls-Bucks saying, wait, he said after the Monday Detroit game that he played in that he felt fine. So what changed between then and now? What happened? And he just said in that clip, it wasn't necessarily one thing, one play. It was just sort of like an accumulation of wear and tear playing on this foot that caused the inflammation that we expected might happen.
Yeah, just more evidence that he should not have been playing in the game. Shouldn't have been out there. It was ridiculous that he was out there. But it's neither here nor there. This is where we are right now. I didn't like the fact that he knows how his body operates after a surgery. And I'm saying that because he's like 23 years old and he already knows this kind of thing right now. That is concerning for me. When he said, well, yeah, usually out of your first surgery, this is how I'm like, oh, man. Like, dude, he knows what it is now. Like, he has an idea in his head about what surgeries are. Like, he's had several. And it's just concerning to me when I heard him say that. It really was, Will.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
I mean, but honestly, to me, it's not really that important heading into this game. We'll wait and see. You know, we knew at the beginning of the year this was going to happen periodically. Okay, what we didn't know is that he would be missing a game or have imaging because of a pain threshold issue. We just thought it would be okay. Occasionally, you're going to have some flare-ups. This is common. The surgery that he's had, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I guess really the only thing that's alarming, and not really because I want to wait and see what happens next week, is that he missed 2 games in a row, more so because he needed to sit out instead of, hey, we're going to do this intentionally on a certain schedule.
Yeah.
So given that Pat remains out, we have our Bulls starting lineup tonight. And
yes, sir. Torrey Craig
pointed out, not Torrey Craig.
Will Perdue?
Giddey, oh my gosh, yes, how great is that? Will, you better get over there, buddy.
10-day coming up, baby.
Giddey, Kobe, Zach LaVine, Vooch, and Ayo Dosunmu.
There we
getting
go.
the start.
That makes sense.
But this is more about matchups.
I think, definitely about matchups. You know, you had Billy went with Torrey Craig in there because of Giannis on Wednesday. Maybe in addition to that, Torrey Craig suffered on what the Bulls injury report is calling a leg contusion injury towards the latter stages of that loss of the Bucks, where he fell out of bounds and crashed into a camera guy or whatever. Maybe it's that he is hampered by that. He was listed as probable most recently, so it could be that Torrey Craig is available and active tonight. But Billy intended to go with Ayo because the other thing that Bulls Nation knows all too well and loves to point out is that Ayo does a pretty good job against a particular star point guard of the Atlanta Hawks.
The warden is what I like to call Ayo Dosunmu. Because he's locking them up every single time. And that's what he does against Trae Young. Trae Young does not like playing against Ayo Dosunmu. The numbers kind of back that up. He really struggles against him. So I completely understand why you want to have him out there playing in the starting lineup against Trae Young. That makes all the sense in the world. It's a real no-brainer of a decision, but it's also still the right decision.
Now, you're right, but Torrey Craig's got to be going like, what the hell else do I need to do? What did I do against Milwaukee?
He gave them really solid minutes in that game.
He did. He played pretty well.
But this is not the Torrey Craig movement, Will. This is the youth movement.
And And I did see that from Cody
Utes?
Westerlund.
Yeah.
Did you see?
Utes.
Did you see the clip from Cody Westerlund?
What?
I would say about 5:30 around that time. Billy Donovan. He said Billy Donovan expects Modest Buzelis to get more minutes.
Oh, I did see
with
that.
Patrick Williams out. So
Which he should.
Billy saying that he's going to get more, and my first thought was more than 4 minutes, or what are we talking
he's gonna
about?
Play
here?
five. He's gonna play 5.5 tonight.
You know what I mean? Like, because technically that's more minutes. So I don't know. That's just cynical Bulls brain working. But yes, that's good to hear that Modest will get some more minutes, and we'll see how it plays out because Atlanta is definitely a long team. They're kind of like the Raptors in that sense.
Concerningly, he didn't mention where Modest would be getting more minutes.
More cynical Bulls brain.
Is it with the Windy City Bulls? I don't know.
She said,
Well,
I
that's-
see your cynicism, and I
since-
raise you.
Since she brought that up, I kind of had a feeling that might be some information that might come out going into this back-to-back without P. Will, because I felt last night, we saw it last week, Modest got sent down for a game and then came back. Modest basically played 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
Because in between there, he dropped down and played last week for the Windy City Bulls. So I thought for sure with the Windy City Bulls being at home and him only playing 6 minutes against Milwaukee,
Right.
that he would have played in that game last night. But they didn't bring any of the guys down.
Good.
And some of those other two-way players, like I know Dom Sanogo's dealing with a minor injury right now. So is EJ Liddell. It's listed as probable, but Sanogo's out. And they kept the other one, who I'm thinking of, DJ Stewart, down with Windy City. But it'll be interesting to see if Modest does, in fact, get any more minutes. But great for Ayo getting the start. He has obviously struggled, especially shooting the ball through these first 15 games this season. Yeah. But in that Bulls earlier win against Atlanta this season, not the Cup, just regular season, 125-113 was the final in that one. That you remember that was that crazy fourth quarter.
Yes.
The Bulls won the fourth quarter 35-15.
Insane.
In a game when they had trailed by as many as 18. They come back and win. Ayo gave him 19 off the bench that night, 7 of 10 from the field, 2 of 3 from downtown, also chipped in 4 dimes in addition to that defense. So, maybe for these Ayo thrives against the Hawks reasons, Billy's like, all right, yeah, Ayo, you're getting that start tonight. But it wasn't just Ayo giving the Bulls a solid game off the bench. The Bulls had 8 guys in double figures in that game against the Hawks, all 5 starters included. I know, Big Dave, I recall you making a comment about the balance the Bulls had offensively because of the Bulls starting 5 in that win against the Hawks a couple weeks ago. Every single one of them, Giddey, Pat, Kobe, Zach, Vooch, took somewhere between 9 and 14 field goal attempts, and they all scored in double figures.
And I'm glad you brought his name up because I'm definitely interested in watching Josh Giddey tonight. Because if it's anybody that needs to bounce back and rebound, it's going to be him. He's been the talk of the town, and not in a good way, about his game. So he's going to have to tap back into what he did in Atlanta that last time. And I think he will. I mean, they match up so well against this team, and it allows Josh Giddey to do what he likes to do best. He can drive against those guys. They're not big enough to stop him when he gets to the bucket and puts his shoulder in and tries to lay it in. He also can facilitate against these guys because the Bulls can cheat kind of with that all-guard lineup against them as well. So there are many options for Josh Giddey to kind of do his thing tonight, along with Ayo, along with Kobe and the rest of the team. So I'll definitely have my eye on him, Will.
Well, ball movement tonight's going to be key, and that's where he really excels. Making that next pass, finding the open man. It's just he's putting a lot of pressure on himself. I mean, you can tell, we kind of talked about it a little bit. We didn't really talk about him in the postgame, but just kind of his body language during the game, most notably after he makes mistakes, he's feeling the pressure.
Yeah.
Because, A, he wants to play well.
Sure.
And, B, he knows, just like when we get to Zach, as Zach talked about, he heard all the criticism. These guys know what's going on. They know what's being said. And if they don't know, their peeps are telling them.
Yeah. You saw Giddey really just he whacked himself in the head after missing that layup in that game on Wednesday night. Clearly he's shown signs that he's frustrated with himself with some of these performances recently. but he had himself a pretty decent game in the Bulls win against the Hawks a couple weeks ago. And that was a game where, like, statistically speaking, things were pretty even keel. Points off turnovers was the same, 18-18. The Bulls had a 11-point margin in fast break points. The Hawks had a 10-point margin in points in the paint. The Bulls just shot the ball a bit more efficiently. 50% from the field compared to Atlanta's 46. The Bulls shot 33.3% compared to Atlanta's 31 on a higher volume of three-point attempts, and free throws were about the same. So, it's Bulls Hawks. It's probably going to be another tight one tonight. It's just a matter of statistically how and why it's going to be another tight one tonight. But I know Perdue, you also wanted to touch on Zach LaVine, who has had some crazy performances recently. Obviously, the fourth quarter explosion in their win against Detroit back on Monday. Then a bit more of a quiet, not a quiet night. I think what did he finish with 27 in their loss to the Bucks? But most of that damage, 20 points in the first half, and then kind of faded in the second half as the Bulls lost control of that one. He also had a really interesting interview with our old good pal Vinny Goodwill, former Bulls insider back at NBC back in the day, who's now writing for Yahoo Sports. Lots of interesting things there, a lot of interesting quotes from Zach LaVine. Which direction did you want to go?
Well, for me, and we touched on this a little bit in the Milwaukee game, is that I want a definitive answer from not verbally from Zach, but I want a definitive answer from Zach about how he wants to play. Okay? And when I say how he wants to play, I mean on a nightly basis. Okay? I love the story about how he talked about accountability, playing with a chip on his shoulder, having an edge, playing with more force. But, I love the fact he identifies that he has defensive lapses. He's doing a better job of self-awareness. But there are three areas where I think that he really needs to excel. Okay? The first is defense. All right? What made Zach so good on the Olympic team?
Defense.
His defense. He really didn't look to score.
No, he didn't.
But also, playing for Pop, I know exactly. Pop pulled him aside and said, Zach, if you want to play on this team, this is what we need from you. Zach said, yes, sir, and he went out and did it. So then us as Bulls fans are like, see, we know he can do it. We know it. Okay? Number two, turnovers. The decisions he makes at game speed. And I think more so some of those turnovers are more off frustration, I think, at times, than anything else. And I think that sometimes maybe that he lets some things that happen throughout a game bother him that maybe shouldn't. And that's where then these first two all add up to the last one, and that's leadership. When I talk about leadership, I mean not vocally and talking about what's going on in the huddle. I played with a guy that said very few words in Tim Duncan. But he led by how he played on the floor, okay? He led with his actions. Tim Duncan never took plays off. Instead of taking a play off, he has to come out of the game. Okay? We all know that Zach occasionally will take plays off on D.
Sure.
Right? Because that is the hard part about defense. That is we can talk about what we want to do, but that's the hard part is that regardless of what's happened offensively, and you heard Zach say it the other night against Houston, our offense was struggling and we let it affect how we play defense. Well, that's been this team's MO for the last couple of years. And there's been a common factor. That factor, Zach. These guys feed off Zach whether he likes it or not. Okay? And that means if he comes out and busts his ass on defense, doesn't necessarily score, that's about as positive as an impact that you can have on this team, because what we've seen him do now offensively is pick and choose his spots. Okay?
Very much so did that in the game on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, he let Vooch do his thing, and then he dropped 18 in the fourth.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what he's capable of offensively. I have no concerns about his offensive game. Okay, outside of, as I pointed out, the turnovers, maybe some of the decisions. But then, I thought he was solid in that Milwaukee game, the backdoor cut pass, things of that nature. But I thought he was locked in and he was focused. Okay? So what I'm basically saying is to take all that package it together. And Zach, do you just want to be known as an all-star? Because right now you're an all-star caliber player. Or do you want to be known as a guy that's better than an all-star? Maybe he's not going to be a superstar, okay? But there are plenty of guys in this league that are treated like superstars, even though they're not, because of the effort that they put in. You want me to give you an example of one?
Sure.
Former Bull, Alex Caruso. I mean, if you just watched how other players react to Alex, to hear how other players talk about Alex, you would think that he's a 12-time All-Star.
Yeah, truly. I mean, like case
And
in
I don't
point,
mean that as disrespect. My point is though, because of just when he steps on the floor, game on.
right?
Okay, and there's no questioning who are we going to get tonight.
And that's leadership. That is leadership, which is what you're talking about needing to see from Zach LaVine. Case in point with Caruso, our guy Will the Goat had a great write-up about Dalen Terry yesterday. Go read it if you haven't yet, allchgo.com. And Dalen just spoke so highly of Caruso in that article, in that interview with Goat, talking about what Caruso taught Dalen, and then even what Dalen just learned from watching tape of Caruso. But obviously, the vocal leadership has always been there with Caruso as well. And we were sitting here talking the other night about, like, dude, Dalen Terry's earning himself a role in Billy's rotation more concretely than he had in either of his past 2 NBA seasons. And when you're talking about young guys needing to develop, whether it's Patrick, Julian, Dalen, Modest, like the young guys on this team, yes, some of it is coaching and your player development staff, but it's also the vets. And Caruso's gone, and DeMar is gone, and so can Zach be somebody that these younger guys look to in the meantime as a leader of this team?
Well, let me ask you, what is it about a guy like Pop that he can get that out of Zach LaVine that other coaches can't seem to get that out of Zach when he says, hey, look, this is what I need you to do, period. This is it. Handle your business. And why can't he get that from, like, other coaches?
Well, I think it's 2 things. Let's just talk about talent first of all. Okay, that team he was on, the Olympic team, was talented. And I think he was smart enough to realize I ain't the best player on this team. And nor do I have the best athletic ability or the best jumper or, we can go down the list. I'm damn good, but these guys are better than me.
Sure.
So when the coach that controls playing time comes to me and tells me what I have to do if I want to play, I got no choice, because if I don't do it, then I'm not playing, because that's how talented the team is. All right? So he's not in that position on this team. So whether it's he's not being held accountable for his actions, because we just heard who's holding Joel Embiid accountable. Tyrese Maxey. Okay, a younger player. Okay, so this is how do you say that?
Ostas Jr.
He makes a valid point about maybe Zach's just not built to be a leader, because Zach, this is his 10th season.
Yeah.
So he's been in the league a while. He's not a youngster, but he's young. I mean, when this contract's up, he's only going to be 32. Dude's got another contract
if he picks
coming.
Up the player option, then he'll be a free agent at 32. He could be a free agent at 31 if he drops that player. But I mean,
player option, but it's
that
48
player option
mil.
is what, like 50 mil, basically?
48.
Yeah.
You turning that down?
I wouldn't.
But my point is that here's the ultimate question, okay? On a contending team, Zach is your blank best player.
Third.
I have always said
Third.
My answer to that question has always been ideally third. If all of the other roster construction around you is perfect, could be second.
I think good second, great third on the team.
Right. But at the current moment, he, at this point, now that DeMar is gone, because I always talked about how the dynamic on this team was really interesting. The face of your organization obviously was Zach LaVine because of the contract, but your best player was DeMar.
Yeah.
And DeMar wasn't necessarily the best player, But that's the direction that the team chose to go because they felt that gave them the best chance to win was to put the ball in DeMar's hands.
And there's no question that when DeMar was the best player was the fourth quarters of tight games. Yes. And when the Bulls got out to that crazy hot start in that first DeMar season, 21-22, he and Zach were both all-stars. And if you all recall, Zach LaVine was also among the league leaders in fourth quarter points scored, but it just seemed, and some of it was the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day buzzer beaters, and then some of it was just like this memorable game or that memorable game. DeMar always seemed to be the one to have the rock in his hands in the fourth quarter, but it's also because they tailored it, as you were saying, like that's what the Bulls tailored their offense towards. Was true. DeMar needed the rock. Zach can be an off-ball player, and that's what we saw. And Zach LaVine talked about that kind of stuff in his interview with Vinny on Monday. He talked about the whole him versus DeMar in the fourth quarter thing. Yeah. He seems to have like a very realistic and healthy outlook on it looking back, but he said like it's one of the things that's taught him about moving forward in his career, like what I can do in a variety of ways for an offense.
Yeah.
But I agree with that because I think Zach still – there's not a lot of times you can see a guy going into his 10th year and be like, he can be better. Mm-hmm. I mean, he really can. I believe that because of just the skill set that he has.
That's real. He could definitely be better, man, and he has been better. I'll say that also for Zach this season. He has definitely been better on and off the court.
Yeah.
Behind the mic, like you mentioned, just how real he was about looking back on those situations. Hell, even starting from media day. Like, he has just been awesome on the microphone, and the things he said, he is saying all the right things and doing all the right things to try to show that he's a leader and can be a leader for this team and maybe other teams. But he's been really good. He's been really good. He is which is wild to say right now, but he is honestly the least of my concern on this team right now because he has figured out when to take over games. I don't have to put my head down and rush things anymore. I don't get as concerned anymore about him bringing the basketball up, which is a huge step. And, yeah, you can see he is affecting winning. So Zach is one of the least people I'm concerned about right now on this team. He's been great.
But I also think, listen, this team's 6-10. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of bright spots.
Yeah.
Okay. We know what the goal is this year. We know that this team doesn't want to give up that draft pick. And mentioning that, if the draft was today, I think I'm going with Ace, number one.
Man, I was watching the highlights from his latest game for Rutgers.
Nice.
Whew.
Nice, man.
Dude, that kid's making like turnaround fadeaways, baseline, all kinds of. My God.
He's nice, man. There's a lot of talent in this draft, ladies and gentlemen. A lot.
Lot of talent.
Get some.
But to your thing about Zach just being very real about this situation this season and being very real on media day, he also said some very real stuff in that Vinny article, and y'all should go read it on Yahoo Sports if you haven't yet. Maybe during halftime tonight or something, because there's a lot of great Zach quotes. But the one that I think was my favorite is that when he was talking to Vinny about all of the trade rumor stuff and his contract and basically everything other than who he is as a player, that's been Zach's name in the papers and in the news the last year or two. He said, "quote I heard everything.
Yes,
I read everything. Yes. Sometimes you got to take that accountability and put a chip on your shoulder." There's a lot of things people said I had to prove. I think my resume speaks for itself, the type of player I am, the type of person I am, but it is what it is. You can always turn some heads. Yeah. And I think that part is the whole, the Zach LaVine remind people tour that, as you were saying, Perdue, this is a two-time All-Star who's still in the prime of his career. And unfortunate that he had, that 3-game absence with that minor injury after some really strong performances out of the gate. Now he's back from that, hopefully continues to be back from that, and do things like he did in the fourth quarter on Monday night, do things like he did in the first half on Wednesday night to show to this league, hey, whether I'm here or whether or not y'all are interested out there, either way, respect to this game because it is what it is.
It is what it is. He's going to have a good game tonight, too. He plays well against the Hawks. 2 of his top 5 scoring performances came against the Hawks. So, yeah, I expect Zach to play well.
No, I expect this team to play well.
Oh,
I expect him, to win this game. You know what I would love, though, is for them to have this thing locked up by the end of the third quarter.
Ooh. What's that? What you got to do, Will?
Get some guys.
I don't got anything to do, but it's just.
It is the front end of a back-to-back.
True.
You got the Grizzlies in town tomorrow night. If you can get some of your key guys a little bit of, ice bags on the knees time in the fourth quarter.
Team that's coming in with a little chip on their shoulder.
Got that right. Yeah, a little bit.
All right, guys. So this is an NBA Cup night. So before we get out of here, the Hawks are 2-0 in the Cup so far. Mentioning them beating the Celtics. Bulls are 0-1. Not only are the Bulls 0-1 in the Cup so far, the Bulls are winless in the existence of the NBA Cup being a thing. They went 0-4 last year. Can we get the first Cup victory tonight? As you see there, here are the standings. A couple of other surprises, like, of the 2-0 teams, the Pistons are in there with 2 wins. You also got Magic and Knicks undefeated in their group, and they're the Bulls 0-1. Can we get to 1-1 in the Cup?
I mean, I would like to. I hope so. Will Perdue guarantees it, so I'm gonna roll with that. Let's go, Will. Let's get
I like the Io said. I think it was maybe Cody Westland who had this quote about Io in the Cup. He was like, "Yeah, man, of course we care. It's like $500K to the winners.
Right.
There's other payouts to the teams that like make the semis and whatnot. Like, yeah, it's getting paid on top of getting paid. Yeah. Let's go out there and win.
Racks on racks on racks.
I asked you, Perdue, like if they did this back in the day when y'all were playing, would you give these games a little extra juice?
Oh, absolutely. For $500K? Come on, man. You know why?
Why?
Because the one guy on our team wants that money. And you know why he wants that money?
The guy on your team who was the highest paid player on your team?
Yeah. You know why he wanted that money? Not so much because he needed it, but he wanted to prevent the other guys on the other 29 teams from getting it.
It is. That's a fact.
So he would basically flash it in front of him and go, "Hey, you guys didn't get this, did you?"
That dude, insane. That's going to do it for pregame. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Hit that like button on your way out if you didn't do it yet, even though Katie reminded you to very politely several times. Do it now. What are you waiting for? Enjoy the game. Hopefully, y'all enjoy the Bulls court. It's red. See red. See red be good. We'll talk to y'all for postgame. Right back here.
Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.